Hey everybody, welcome to the Shrimp City Report. My name's Devin. I'm joined today with the co-host.
DJ here.
And we have a special guest today, Kevin Roche.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great. Glad you could come by. He's a man of many hats that he wears as far as in the entertainment world around Charleston, pretty renowned. I will say that he is also part of the Midnight Terrors podcast, which is Charleston City Paper's best podcasts in Charleston for 2024.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel, a big award winner like that?
It's pretty surreal. We definitely gave it our all when we saw that we were nominated, and just goes to show that we have a very loyal community behind us of friends and family, and they're the ones that put us there. So could not be more grateful for the people behind us, and happy to be where we are.
Okay.
Awesome.
How long have you been doing the podcast?
Our 2-year anniversary is going to be July 3rd of this year, so just under 2 years.
Do you have anything big and special for that?
We are kicking around like a big movie topic. I think the one that we're discussing is maybe talking about The Exorcist, and then having 2 other podcasts join us for that one, and then probably a big bonus episode, like a fantasy draft episode of some sort of topic in the horror genre. So
who do you do the podcast with first?
Well, so it started with myself. I came up with the idea when I was at a horror con, and I wanted to have a podcast that sort of emulated the feel of a horror convention. The first person I brought on board was my brother-in-law, Jason. Started with us for probably about a year or so, maybe a year and a half. And then now we've almost got this big team where we brought in our buddy Roy from Ohio. He co-hosts the weekly episodes with us. And then I also do live events with the show, and my co-host for that one is my best friend, Jules.
Okay.
So we've got a nice little team going, and we like to rotate co-hosts. So it's kind of just become this big pool of co-hosts that we can kind of pull from, which is nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is a good idea. We have a collective aspect here as well, where Jonathan will be in on some shows.
Yeah.
Devin, Madeline will be sitting in. It just kind of depends on the guest, since we're kind of an omni podcast at this point. All right, getting back to Midnight Terrors, you said you were inspired to do this by the convention scene, and just did you see other folks broadcast at conventions? Do people do podcasts or do live shows or anything? Or
yeah, they've so when I went to a convention called Carolina Fear Fest up in Raleigh, North Carolina, they had, a bunch of vendors, a bunch of celebrities there, and there are definitely some people that walk around with podcast gear and kind of interview people, but really what it was just the feel of that community there. I'm a lifelong horror fan at this point, and just when you go there and you get to, just make friends with people in line and get to meet people that you admire in the scene. It was just a feeling that lasted a weekend, but I wanted it to go, have an outlet like that and not have to wait for another convention. So that's kind of where that was born. And there was other, my favorite podcast of all time is called Horror Movie Night. Okay. And they talk about movies every week, and I'd listened to some other podcasts that did it. So I was like, hey, why not do this and just make it a big community?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So taking a step back, how long have you been into, I guess, the horror genre?
So horror's always kind of been around, but I don't have family members that are like as avid of watchers as I am.
Yeah.
But I can remember being, under 10 years old and seeing Scream on the television and running out of the room when that opening scene happened. I can remember just a lot of like 90s horror being on around, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, because my sisters were teenagers then.
Yeah. Okay.
And then really the one that cemented it for me was I was 11 years old and I watched Stephen King's It for the first time with Tim Curry as Pennywise, and it terrified me to no end for about 3 months. Was scared of sewers, shower drains, anything like that. And but then after it sort of wore off, it became something of a thrill, and it's something I wanted to pursue more and realize, hey, I love the stories that the genre has to tell, and I love the idea of being scared and getting involved that way. So I kind of just started looking for more, and that's how I got here.
Awesome, yeah.
Horror seems like there's just such an industry of it. There's always, I guess, since movies started, I mean, a lot of creators went straight for scary movies and horror movies. And what are there, 300 a year? I mean, all the way down to the student level. You really have a good podcast, because you're never going to run out of material, are you?
Definitely not. Definitely not. There's at least 30 horror movies that come out a year, I would say.
So, do you mainly focus on the classics, or do you ever dip into like the janky, budget horrors like Leprechaun or anything, or like any like Troll, the Trolls, right? That was one of them.
Yeah,
too?
Yeah. So we definitely like to shake it up. We like to go for the classics, but we also like to go just for ones that we really like, or we definitely like to go for the goofy ones sometimes. Actually, our live event in March, me and Jules, our task for that was we had to watch all 8 Leprechaun movies in the span of about 2 weeks, and then we had to rank them.
Yeah.
So that was quite the, and we made it basically a whole B horror icon theme show. And the Leprechaun movies are a treat, I can say that much.
So watching them in that, I assume you watched them in order. Mm-hmm. Did it's just like, like all the latest Star Wars stuff just now has melted into one humongo movie to me. I can't tell one from the other. I mean, is that how Leprechaun, or is it so distinct?
Are you asking if the continuity held up?
Yeah, the Leprechaun universe.
You know what's funny is that you look at something like Friday the 13th with Jason Voorhees, and those can kind of blend together because it's just a summer camp slasher every time. The Leprechaun movies, credit to them, they actually are pretty distinct each time.
Yeah.
They go from Leprechaun, which is just, like a basic slasher. They go to Leprechaun 3, where they're in Vegas. Leprechaun 2, the leprechaun's looking for a bride. They go to In the Hood.
Right.
So they go all over the place.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the podcast weekly, right?
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to stay on schedule, to have content come out regularly to keep fans because of all the competition, right?
This is true. We have so much, like we do try to stay on the weekly basis as much as you can. Obviously sometimes life, gets in the way and you just get busy. But like we have so much content these days that's coming out on a regular basis that we almost have some wiggle room to not have to post an episode every single week. So this past Friday we did a live event, which was the Dark Side of Disney was our theme for that.
I saw that. Okay. I saw your promo for that.
And so I record those and put those out as episodes. So these days we crank out so much material. And last week I just released 2 episodes in one day. So this time around it's like, okay, we can pull back a little bit. But I do think it's important to keep people on board and, not abandon people in that way by letting content fall by the wayside. And I think it's important for me personally and for my co-hosts that we stay on top of it to keep ourselves going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I guess you have to self-police. And one thing that I've found when we used to do a comic book podcast, going to conventions, setting up, I know that you've podcasted from conventions before, right? Mm-hmm. So that seems like a good content, bust out about 8 interviews in one day and just kind of spread them out, and you can take the summer off, Doing a convention, do you just try to wrangle folks in to talk to them, or you try to schedule some folks, or how do you do that?
So we've broadcasted live, or not live, but we've recorded content from 2 conventions so far. And when we did those, we recorded on the spot. I went home a few days later and then posted them. Yeah. When we go to conventions, usually my goal, just to kind of, because we like to keep it natural, but we also want to give people time to think about what they would like to say. So we usually try to go the schedule route, especially if we're trying to get a celebrity guest on. Yeah. We definitely want to try to give them time to prepare and, not spring anything on them.
That is good. I mean, I'm usually, I don't know. I don't like imposing myself, but I will. But as far the conventions, and do you see a lot of the same faces? Is horror a community, or is the fandom a community that you'll see people consistently at any of the conventions, or even if local events,
Yeah, I think that you definitely see repeat celebrities from time to time, and you definitely, if you're in a small local area like kind of the Carolinas you'll probably run into a lot of familiar faces. And actually, sometimes celebrities will remember you from these cons. And a very surreal moment for me was when I went to Mad Monster in February. And if anyone listening has heard of the movie Sleepaway Camp from the 80s.
Oh, yeah, to the max.
Yep. Felissa Rose, the star of that movie, I met her at that first con where I started the convention. And then I saw her again in February this year. And she remembered me and my mom.
Oh, yeah.
And we walked up to the table, and before we said a word, she's like, "Oh, it's you two." You know?
Yeah, no spoilers, because that's the ultimate horror spoiler, in my opinion. But that I'll never forget when I saw that for the first time. It just fell off my couch. It was astonishing.
It is mind-blowing.
Yeah. So I'll show young Dev later. might have before. So, well, what's your favorite horror movie? Or what's your top? Give me three.
Let's do that. Here's my idea.
Okay, go ahead.
Mount Rushmore of horror icons.
All right, I like this.
Yeah.
So, for personal reasons, I got to put Pennywise on there because I wouldn't be here if that had never happened.
Well, the new movie just made a giant resurgence for that.
It did, yeah. So I'd probably, but it's got to go Tim Curry Pennywise for me, even though I do love the remakes with Bill Skarsgård. I thought he did a great job and was the only person that could follow in Tim Curry's footsteps.
Yeah.
After that, I'd probably say Michael Myers. That's another big one for me, is that original Halloween. What is there, 4 heads on Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, 4.
What kind of American?
Yeah. Let's see. So Pennywise, Michael Myers, probably say maybe Freddy Krueger.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like that's one that is accessible for a lot of people. I'm trying to think if there's like a really classic one, like maybe Reagan from The Exorcist.
Okay, yeah.
Probably go with those 4. That's a good little pot of horror characters there.
Yeah.
It is. Plus, those are recognizable movies. What is the demon's name in Exorcist?
Pazuzu.
That's
Pazuzu. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because Danhausen took his gimmick for his wrestling gimmick. The great Danhausen, pro wrestler for AEW. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, that's a great Mount Rushmore. I think everyone's seen those. If you go super obscure, it's going to be like if you're talking to someone that's in a band and they're just pulling out krautrock albums from 1971. I was like, yeah, no thanks. Maybe we could go, but we could always get the 4 most obscure things. I mean, what if you're talking to anybody right now, and there's one definitive horror movie, it doesn't have to be your favorite. What do you think what is the one horror movie everybody must see?
Like the best jumping point, or the
just
best...
if you're going to watch a horror movie, you need to go watch, I don't know, Dawn of the Dead, or if this is the definitive thing to watch, the Criterion selection. That's a hard one, right?
That is a very difficult one. Yeah. There's a few ways you could go with it, like DJ said, there's a lot of good jumping points that embody a lot of what the horror genre is. I'd probably go with the original Halloween. Okay. I think that it embodies, just the total aspect of pure evil. I think it's got the slasher element. It's got a great score. It's got, some good jump scares in there. I think it still holds up beautifully to this day, almost 50 years later. And it's John Carpenter, so you just can't go wrong with John Carpenter.
Plus, it's spooky. I mean, I like spooky movies.
Yeah. So you're at a horror convention. I know for a lot of comic conventions, for comic fandoms, there's like subsections of collectors or what people like. What does a horror fandom like? So what are the subsections? Or do they have like specialties? Like some people who only like the classic, like Frankenstein Universal Monster stuff, or there's some people who specifically like the more realistic, like thriller stuff.
I think that what's great about the horror genre is that everybody is got all types of favorites.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that in talking, if you poll, say, like 100 people at a horror convention and you ask them, what's your favorite subgenre of horrors, you're probably going to get like 50 different answers.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But I think that I think there are different subgenres and subsidiaries of horror fans, but I think all of them are able to come together and still like connect just over the love of horror. So it's not like if say look at something like music, if you're like a metal fan and you meet someone who like only likes pop music and maybe you're like, oh, I can't connect with them in that way. I don't think it's ever like that with the horror genre.
Okay, so for any of the podcasts you do, I presume it's about a movie. You're going to watch the movie. Are you going to take notes? Are you going to compare with other folks that are going to be on there? Are you going to try to shoot from the cuff? How much of that is organic?
For me personally, I think every co-host on the show has a different way of doing things. For me personally, what I try to do is if we're going to talk about a movie, if it's one that I'm, say one of my top 10 favorite, like It or Halloween or something, it's not something I have to rewatch and I can probably just pull off the cuff, which I've done for a few episodes. But I most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, try to watch the movie and then take notes on my phone and have more so not specific quotes or anything, but like little bullet points of like, oh, I'd like to point out the music here or the tactic of the scare here. But we also try to keep it, pretty off. We like to go off on tangents and make jokes and things like that. And I think that's why we like doing the show is because it just feels like a real conversation. So we try to do like a mixture of like, okay, we'll prepare little notes here and there and make these points that we want to hit on as we go. But we also just kind of use that more of like a guideline as opposed to a script.
How deep do you go into like, I guess the scare, like you said, or the horror of the moment? How much do y'all dissect those moments and take a look at that?
It depends on what we're talking about. Because based on the movie, it could be something that there is a lot to dissect, or it could just be, oh, I didn't expect that scare and it got me.
Yeah.
So, there's some movies that are just very surface level jump scares. And then there's ones where there's a lot of tactic buildup where they trick you with some sort of camera shot, or the sound design is playing tricks on you or something like that. So it kind of varies depending on the movie, which is what I also like about the show is that we could talk about something like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which we did on our buddies podcast. And we were just talking about the absurdity of it. And then we go to talk about something like The Platform from Netflix, which has a lot of biblical mythology to it or themes to it. We dissected it that way of like, okay, so for people listening, The Platform is this movie where this guy is put into a prison and there's like 40 something floors on here. And each floor gets like a platform of food, and the platform above them will take their share of the food, and then the people below basically just get what's left over.
Yeah.
So it almost is like a circles of hell type thing.
Yeah, cool.
So we dissected it from that angle. So
No joke. There's a Gordon Ramsay cooking show that's basically the exact same thing.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called? Next Level Chef, where it's like the top people get to choose their food, and it's like by the time you get to the bottom, there's like scraps, basically. Yeah.
It's a pretty terrifying concept, too, especially when you see what happens to the people in the movie.
Yeah.
Because that just what happens to their psyche as they go through that is pretty insane.
I mean, that is pretty profound. It really does speak to the hierarchy of civilization, period. So, I mean, we don't have to go down that road. We can talk about funny movies instead. So I dig... I don't know, Devin, what's your favorite horror movie? I know we like funny horror movies.
I mean, again, I don't know if it's dipping too much into sci-fi, but I've always liked the first Alien the best. I really liked the new It's, especially the first one.
For sure.
But yeah, Alien is always like my go-to. I don't know if it, again, dips too much into like sci-fi, fantasy, but I think it's fantastic.
No, I think science fiction and horror were completely married at some point, John Carpenter's The Thing. He did The Thing, right?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's classic. So yeah, I think a lot of my horror watching was ruined by riff tracks and Mystery Science Theater. So I was, But then again, I'm a big chicken. I don't watch a lot of horror. I watch one movie every year, and it's Planet Terror, or either one of the Crazies,
and
one or two.
What is it?
I adore both of them.
Was it Lichen Colony? Is that the one we watched?
Oh yeah, we
with
watched
the
the
werewolves?
Lichen Colony recently, which was awful. Okay, let's go on to some of your other endeavors. You are a musician. In fact, you have a gig tonight. How often do you play out? Do you do mainly solo stuff?
Yeah, for the most part, it's me and my acoustic guitar. There have been open mics around town that have a band element to them. It's funny, when I got into music, I always wanted nothing more than to be in a band, because I used to be really shy, so the idea of me just being up there on stage by myself was like, nope, not gonna happen. So it's funny how times change like that. But yeah, for the most part, it's me doing singing and acoustic guitar. And I try to do songs that are favorites of mine, while also doing songs that people know, because you never want to go up and do like a whole set of songs that nobody knows.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always trying to find that balance, but I also try to challenge myself and do. So when I've run into Devin's heard me sing Square Hammer by Ghost.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And try to go with a little more off the wall choices there.
My wife talks about that all the time, by the way, hearing Square Hammer. Have you ever had a situation where you did pull out something that was a little less notable, and someone came up to you and was like, what was that song you played 3 songs ago?
Yeah, I've had that happen a few times. I remember one time I was out at Southern Roots in West Ashley, and I was playing something by this pop punk band called State Champs, and the song was called Elevated. And the guy came up to me, and he kind of knew the song a little bit, but he came up and he was like, was that State Champs? Because I didn't really say what the name of the song was. I just said, here's a pop punk song. And he was like, I did not expect to hear that type of song here at this open mic tonight. So yeah, a few times, Ghost is probably the biggest one, where people go, I like that song a lot. I'm going to go check out Ghost. Which is always cool. Ghost is one of my favorites. They have I don't know if you saw, Devin, but they have a movie coming out now.
Yeah, it's going to be at the Terrace soon.
Yep. It looks like it's a continuation of their web series as well as concert footage. So I'm excited for that one.
That would be great. I think personally there should be more concert movies.
Yeah.
My most recent musical obsession is a newer band called Sleep Token.
Okay. Yeah.
And their tickets sell out like nobody's business. I tried to get tickets for their North American tour earlier this year, and the promo codes went out late, so I couldn't get into the pre-sale thing, and by the time I got there was like 1,000 people in front of me. So I was like, great.
It's crazy how fast tickets sell out now for any event, whether it's like sports or music now.
It almost seems like it's not possible, as in, I'm not going to say who it is, but it rhymes with Ticketmaster, that buys everything, AIs everything.
It's funny how pre-sale has just become the regular sale now. It's
Yeah.
like we might as well just release it all at once.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
Like I remember Elton John rolled through here a couple years ago, and I wanted to get my dad tickets to see him because that's his favorite singer, and didn't see the pre-sale code in time, and by the time they went on sale to the general public, they were just gone.
Yeah.
Or they were on sale for like nosebleed was like $100. I'm like, there's no way. So
doing solo gigs, going out, do you have, how many places do you hit in generally, and how often do you want to do that or like doing it?
I try to go, like these days, because of how much I'm doing, I'm not out as much as I normally would be, but I would usually try to go like at least every other week. Try to hit up maybe 1 or 2 open mics. Southern Roots in West Ashley, Stone's Throw in Goose Creek, or also West Ashley. Tommy Connens is always my favorite place to go. There's a few that have started up, that are smaller open mics. Cedar Creek or something like that, I think is a new one. So I try to go support my friends that are hosting the events, or just try to go where there's the most musicians hanging out. So it depends on the week, and try to go meet as many people as I can, and go play wherever I can and support all my friends.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's why I liked when y'all were doing it at Southern Roots here in Park Circle. because I'm lazy and I can just basically ride my bike over there and see everybody. So that was always a treat.
But yeah, so, like something like Southern Roots there for a while was like, oh, go here, and then you see all your friends that you get to meet up with every week. Yeah. So it's cool. It's nice to have a mixture of that. Musically, I'm trying to, like I said, doing the live podcast events, I'm trying to make that an element of the live podcast events as well, because I think it's cool to have not just an event where we get to talk at you for 2 hours. We get to do some trivia. We get to do like a costume contest, and then we have some live music for you. So I'm trying to also put some live music into different types of events as well, as opposed to just an open mic every week.
That you're doing a variety show now. You're going to be on late night. Up against Kimmel soon.
Late Night Terrors.
Yeah. Actually, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that domain name right.
Yeah, steal it from a...
That sounds like a management nightmare. The thought of doing a live podcast. I mean, I was flustered just trying to set this tiny thing up today. I mean, getting a live podcast, do you have your own PA for that, or you set up PA? Is it?
Yeah, so I have like a 12-track soundboard with a couple microphones, and then literally 10-inch speakers.
Okay. Cool.
But we just kind of crank it up. But yeah, we play our theme song through the speakers, and we get a big audience in front of us, and we try to pick episodes that are interactive where people can talk at us or yell at us if they think we're wrong. One of the things I like to do that we do every episode or every live event is a bracket war, where we'll take various horror icons and pit them against each other round by round, and people can be like, what are you talking about? You got to put This person through. So we did that with the Disney villains on Friday.
Cool,
so
cool.
We like to, our whole idea with that is to, if you've never been on a podcast, I encourage everyone to do it because it can teach you a lot of skills.
Yep.
And our whole idea is, if you've never been on one, well, here's your chance to do it. You can come to this live event, we'll record it, and there's your voice right there on a podcast.
Awesome, yeah.
Well, that is good. The interactive part is...
Yeah, now you've got me thinking. I'm like, I don't think anyone can beat Hades.
That was actually the villain I dressed up as for that night,
awesome,
so there you go.
Yeah.
I forget who, I think Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame won the bracket war for that.
Gotcha.
I was about to say, what was the most surprising character that went well into the bracket that you were like, I'm surprised that character went that far? Where did Cruella DeVille get chopped off?
She made it about 2 rounds in, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
So we did one side, pick the finalist of that side. We do the other side, pick the finalist of that side. And I think Cruella made it to the semi-semifinals, something like that.
Okay.
Honestly, Frollo was probably the one that shocked me the most. He is definitely an evil person, but Hunchback of Notre Dame just being one that people don't talk about as much, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I will say one that at our previous live event that we did in April, it was a halfway to Halloween event, and we did Halloween icons, and one that I put in there as a joke, just for a laugh, was I put the Great Pumpkin from Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown in there.
Oh, yeah.
And people were like, wait, what? The Great Pumpkin's not even in the movie. I said, I know, that's why it's here. It's funny. And they ended up trolling me and pushing it towards almost the last round.
Yeah.
And then when it lost, they were like, justice for the Great Pumpkin. So...
My God, a Halloween bracket's brilliant. I can see, oh my God, that argument must have been epic.
It was, that's why we like to record those too, because the energy in the room is just so much fun. People are, all in good fun, but I love when they're like, what are you guys talking about? And they yell at us or disagree with us. I just think it's all in good fun on the show, where we can just have some friendly debates with each other. And even my co-host, Jules, when she saw the Great Pumpkin, she's like, I need to oversee this next time you put this together, because what are you doing? So...
Well, that's hard. And hell, I guess it's hard to seed the brackets, much less, or if you seed them, I don't know. Maybe it just draw, throw 8 people up against 8 people. So, So you do other stuff as well. Tell us what this shadowcast is.
So if anyone out there is a fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, you probably see pictures online where people go to see the movie and they're dressed up as the characters, and there will be a cast acting out the movie, like miming it in front of the screen while the movie's playing. And then there's, funny callbacks and props and things like that. So my friend Jules is the president of Charleston's Absent Friends, who's the local Rocky Horror shadowcast. And I've been a fan of them since 2016. And just this past year, I got involved with them. Just, we became good friends. I kept going to the shows. And at one point, they needed a fill-in for Eddie, Meatloaf's character.
I saw when you posted that.
Yep. And they were like, if you want to do it, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Was super nerve-wracking the first time, but it ended up being super, super fun. And then Disney. December, I played Riff Raff for a show, and then I just auditioned to be a full-time cast member for the new season. So it's basically, doing acting in front of a movie with funny callbacks and little skits in the middle there, pre-shows, and things like that. We actually also just did that for the movie The Princess Bride earlier this month as well, and I was Wesley for that.
Okay, awesome.
I saw that group. What was the name of them?
Charleston's Absent Friends.
Yeah, they were a finalist in one of the city paper categories.
Best performing arts group.
Yep.
You said that that you got into them in 2016, but they've been doing it for longer, right?
Yeah, so their founder, or one of their founders, Jody, started it in, I believe, 2002.
Yeah, because I remember, even in high school, you go to School of the Arts, so of course everyone and their mother has seen Rocky Horror.
Yep.
And it was like a big thing to go and watch the Shadowcast whenever they were had them in theaters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're so much fun to be around. That whole group is just wonderful, and the shows are always something different, always funny, always very immersive, always very inclusive, and it's just one of my favorite things to do. So first Friday of every month, they have a tradition of doing that now, which is awesome, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Awesome.
Is that always at the Terrace?
Yes.
Okay.
The first Friday of the month shows are always at Terrace, but this month this coming month, for Pride, they have one down the street at a itinerant literate bookstore over there in Park Circle.
Yeah.
And they try to go to, I think they've done a show with Frothy Beard once or twice.
Cool.
So they try to go into some new areas as well. But Terrace Theater is always their home base.
Yeah, that's cool. And then I guess you can have the audience participation like in the old days of Rocky Horror with all the accoutrements.
Yep, they've got little survival kits with toilet paper and cards and noisemakers and all sorts of stuff like that.
That's great. Love it. It's one of my favorite science fiction movies. Got in an argument in the 90s with someone that was adamant that it was a horror flick. And I'm like, dude, it's in the song.
Yeah.
It's a science fiction flick. So.
Yeah, I think it's got some horror elements in there with the Frankenstein element to it. But yeah, it's definitely science fiction, comedy, horror. It's just this big melting pot of a bunch of different genres, which is awesome. And musically, it's been a big influence on me. I've covered a few songs from the soundtrack, which has been fun. Science fiction double feature and Hot Patootie Bless My Soul.
Right. What movies would lend themselves to shadow casting? What do y'all think?
I'm not sure.
Star Wars stuff, something that's got a lot of swords and
We did Princess Bride. That was one that's another popular one. Apparently that one is just as big, if not a little bit bigger than Rocky Horror Picture Show for shadow casting.
Oh, wow.
One that has come up a few times amongst the group is Young Frankenstein. What else have we talked about?
What about this would be I guess complicated. I was thinking Nightmare Before Christmas or something like that.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
The costuming may be tough.
Yeah, the costuming would be, you'd have to spend 3 times as much.
Yeah,
trying to think what else has come up. I think Scream was thrown around.
Oh, yeah,
as a shadow cast. That would be fun. A little more obscure, but Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses was another one.
Fantastic movie.
You
should shadow cast your shadow cast. You should have 2 troops of people.
Yeah.
And then eventually the entire theater is just going to be this tertiary mass of people doing that.
Yeah.
Well, what's cool about what CAF does is that every other month or so they have a theme show where they still shadowcast Taraki, but they dress as different characters from like another movie or show.
Oh, cool.
So coming up in June for the Pride show, they have a Broadway themed show where they'll be dressed as various characters from Broadway.
All right.
But let's see. Last year they had a Tim Burton themed show, so they all dressed up as Tim Burton characters. They had October was the Munsters versus the Addams Family. I think we have a Batman show coming up, X-Men. They did a science fiction one just this month. So they had like the Terminator. They had Captain Kirk, Venkman from Ghostbusters. So it's like you're still watching Rocky, but they incorporate elements from other fandoms in there, which is really cool.
Cool, yeah.
Wow, that is cool. It also keeps you coming back. I mean, the show's the show, and it's fun. But if they're doing that with different characters, I would love to see that.
We've got quite the schedule coming up this season with the theme shows.
Okay, cool. Well, y'all need to do a Happy Days Laverne and Shirley one. Let me know about that.
For sure.
Tell me about your events that are coming up. Any nights we can catch you singing. We'll try to share everything on social media as well.
So right now, we are trying to work on more live events for the podcast. I think there's going to be a Pride Edition one at the end of June, somewhere around there. We're finalizing the details on that. Open mic wise, you can catch me at Tommy Condon's, as much as possible. I usually will post on my music page if I'm going to be there hanging out. It's not our event, but we are going to be hanging out there. In the last weekend in August, there's a horror con called Spooky Empire coming up. So we will be Midnight Terrors will go have a presence there to go possibly vend, but definitely to go hang out and go talk to people, and we're going to try to organize something special for that. And then I start as a shadowcaster for Charleston's Absent Friends in July. So the first Friday in July, I'll be making my official cast debut as Riff Raff. Okay,
so you're going to be practicing that all the time, doing those shows, playing music, going to cons, doing... So do you ever sleep?
Not as much as I should, but I think that I just love to be creative. It's just my favorite thing in the world, especially being creative with other people in my life. So like if I, bust my behind just being creative constantly, then I can sleep pretty soundly just knowing I'm out there, doing the things that I want to do and making memories and experiences with those I love. So
okay,
awesome,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, you built quite a podcast with Midnight Terrors. Your tenacity, the cool content, putting stuff out, like I said, the recognition of being, voted best of Charleston. That's no slight accomplishment. So we're proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
The other thing is Devin usually, or DJ Young Devin, whatever you say, he usually has a question for our guest at the end.
Yeah, so we ask our every guest one question, pertains to being a Charleston local. What's your favorite way to eat shrimp?
Okay, so this is kind of shameful of me. I, growing up, did not like seafood at all.
That's fine. Okay.
So I'm very, very new to... Now I'm obsessed with it. Like any chance I get to go get some good seafood, I am all about it.
I had a similar thing too, where I wasn't big specifically on shrimp either when I was growing up, and it wasn't until like a recent. I don't know if it's just because it's everywhere in Charleston or something, but yeah. Yeah,
and you wouldn't even eat boiled shrimp, and I was like, "Holy smokes, man!"
Yeah,
you have Lowcountry DNA.
I think so far the best form I had, and I'm not sure what you would classify it as. It was like almost fried, but not really.
Yeah.
There's a place called Table and Tavern over there in Shem Creek.
Okay.
They had some shrimp that was like kind of crispy, but still kind of like boiled style. That the sauce that they put on it almost made it like sweet and sour chicken from like a Chinese restaurant.
That's fine with me.
And it was very, very good. Just a lot of good finger food there. With some crackers and stuff. So that was probably my favorite. Was like half boiled, half fried.
Awesome, yeah.
Cool. We'll check it out. We always like some inside info on restaurants, bars, whatever. Where to go see a movie,
For sure.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thanks for coming on, Kevin. We hope to see more with Midnight Terror soon, and keep it up, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Oh, good.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if anybody wants to get involved with Midnight Terrors, you can find us on our socials under Midnight Terrors Podcast. And if you want to join our Facebook group there, we got a good little community of horror lovers there that are always talking and always having fun with each other. So come check us out for sure.
Amazing. Yeah.
We'll link y'all up, and to the rest of y'all in the podcast world, we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Later.
Bye.